Welcome everyone for the first CoSA member webinar for 2022. And our topic today is what's on tap for CoSA in 2022. And so I'm going to turn this over to Eric Emerson, who is our president. And Eric, take it away.
Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to What's on Tap for CoSA in 2022. I'm Eric Emerson, Director of the South Carolina Department of Archives and History and the State Archivist for South Carolina. I also serve as the current president of the Council of State Archivists. So this webinar will provide you with an update of what CoSA has planned for the forthcoming year and will feature a number of reports from the organization's various committees, followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions and get a brief description of upcoming CoSA programs and webinars. So presenters for today are myself, Tom Ruller from New York, who's a CoSA immediate past president and also chairs the Executive Search Committee, Jamie Awalt from Tennessee, who's our CoSA treasurer and chairs the Finance Committee, Lizette Pelletier, who chairs the Development Committee, she's from Connecticut, Kathy Popovich from Illinois, who will report on the Education and Training Committee, Steve Murray, who will report on the Advocacy Committee. Kathy's from Illinois, Steve's from Alabama. Sarah Kuntz from North Carolina will report on the Joint Working Group on Issues and Awareness. Ken Williams from Utah will report on the Nominating Committee. Tom Ruller, once again, will report on Awards Committee. Alejandro Multanat will report on the State Electronic Records Initiative. And Patsy Mitchell will report on the forthcoming CCABPE Conference in Tennessee. Finally, we'll finish everything up with Lisa Johnson, who you just heard from, reporting on upcoming events and meetings for CoSA. So, one second, folks. That will. We can start with the mission. That's importantly, it's important for us to all know exactly what CoSA is and what it does. We're going to talk about our strategic plan in just a second, but during the strategic planning process that we just finished up in December, CoSA came up with a revised version of its mission statement, and that's listed here. The Council of State Archivists provides leadership to strengthen and support state and territorial archives leaders and staff in their work to preserve and provide access to government records. Similarly, during that process, we also came up with a different set of core values, our core value statement. There we go. CoSA strives to be relevant. We anticipate and respond to developing trends, emerging research, and advocacy issues that meet the evolving needs of state and territorial archives leaders and staff. We strive to be inclusive. We represent all state and territorial archives leaders and staff. We encourage all agencies to provide equitable access to state records. And we advocate for equity and inclusion within the government records workforce. We also strive to be collaborative. We acknowledge, amplify, and facilitate the creative strength and extensive knowledge of diverse members, partners, and stakeholders working together. Think we're missing a slide, but you can just hold it right there and I'll go with what we got. Okay, so nearly 2 years of COVID-related challenges have forced all of us to be more adaptable and creative in how we work and live. And with that in mind, CoSA is looking forward to 2022 and the opportunities that the new year can provide for our state and territorial archives. We're excited to announce that on December 22nd, 2021, the board of directors approved a new strategic plan for the years 2022 to 2026, and we're in the process of implementing that plan. COVID-19 and the related social, economic, and workplace disruptions of the previous 2 years has provided the organization with opportunities to revise program delivery, member communications, and now to update our strategic plan. This process has allowed the board, staff, and members to consider the organization's strengths and weaknesses and contemplate future opportunities and relationships in light of the lessons learned during the past 2 years. The update process, which was led by Ann Ackerson, who's a former director of CoSA and highly regarded facilitator for strategic planning, included one-on-one conversations with state archivists as part of the annual calls to the states, focus groups of state archivists and state archive staff, and benchmarking of allied organizations with selected one-on-one interviews with organization leaders with whom CoSA has close collaborations. A key aspect of all of this, and revising the strategic plan, is a renewed focus on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how each of CoSA's communities and the organization as a whole can pursue those objectives. So the crafting of a new strategic plan also comes shortly after the approval on March 25th, 2021 of a new strategic plan for the State Electronic Records Initiative, or the SERI Committee. This plan will cover the years 2021 to 2024, and it meshes really well with the strategies and objectives set forth in the new CoSA strategic plan. For the forthcoming year, CoSA will continue to pursue its efforts to support collaboration with members, board members, committee chairs, staff and contractors, corporate sponsors, and partner organizations. We also plan to work collaboratively with state archivists and state archive staff. We're pleased to announce that we had over 60 members of state and territorial archives currently volunteering to serve on CoSA communities. In the forthcoming year, the organization also will continue to offer its most popular webinars while pursuing new research projects and promoting discussion among archival communities. CoSA also will continue to refine its website and member communication platform through its use of Higher Logic in order to ensure the most effective means of disseminating information to its members and the public. Beginning in the fall, CoSA will deploy its ARM survey, which has proven to be a really valuable source of information for state and territorial archives, especially in its use as a tool for archival advocacy. We also anticipate hiring a new executive director this spring and adding a part-time deputy director to the permanent staff as a result of the pending retirement of Barbara Teague, who could not be here to participate in today's call. So as we go forward, the next item on the agenda is to talk a little bit more about if you could just, yeah, that's it. Okay. To talk a little bit more about the CoSA Executive Director search. So I'd like to introduce Tom Roller, who the immediate past president of CoSA and the chair of the Executive Director Search Committee. So Tom, just take it away.
Eric, we don't see Tom on the list of attendees, and I haven't heard from him. So can you go ahead and cover this?
I'll cover it. Well, first, my apologies to everybody who's on this call. We're having some technical difficulties, as is so apt to happen in this environment. So the application deadline for the Executive Director search is February 1. We've posted the announcement for the position on a number of ASLH and a number of other venues. Interviews for the position will start in February and March, and then the selection process will begin in March. And then that person is intended to begin work in April or May at the latest. The current executive director had hoped to be done with their position as a permanent employee by June. But there would be some overlap and transition, and there'd be a brief period of that with the current executive director, who's Barbara Teague. So we're looking forward to continuing this process for the search, and we have a number of applicants so far. If you know of anyone who would be interested in applying for the position of executive director for CoSA, please apply. You can either apply directly through the committee, or you can apply through one of the where the ad is actually posted. So next, we'll move on to Jamie Awalt for the Treasurer's Update and the Finance Committee report. Jamie?
Great. Thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Awalt, the Assistant State Archivist in Nashville, Tennessee. And so let's start a little bit by looking at 2021. So CoSA's revenue generally comes from dues, sponsorships, and grants. And so taking a look back at this last year, the continued pandemic continued to force us to make a few changes and to see a few alterations in our financial situation, which overall is still very good. But primarily due to a lack of an annual meeting in person. We met virtually, but we don't have any revenue from that annual meeting. So that has impacted some of that financial situation. And then you can see our dues payments in 2019, before the pandemic, we had 50 states at a little over $135,000. That was down in 2020. It came back up slightly last year, which is great news. We had 46 states pay their dues at least the base level for the total of $127,000 and $280, excuse me. So that's kind of where it comes from. More promising news, CoSA's investment fund, which includes the reserve fund and awards fund, made gains in 2021. They grew 18% last year, and our total amount invested is over $270,000. Grants, as I said, make up a large portion of the revenue, and 2 grants for the SERI initiative, a subgrant from the University of Illinois, which was funded by the Mellon Foundation. It's a 2-year award at $100,000. And then we have a grant from IMLS, which is a 3-year grant funding for over $475,000, which allows us to comfortably pursue initiatives and carry out great programs such as SERI and Backer. So 2022, looking forward, the outlook for this current year looks really good. We're in a strong financial position with a healthy reserve fund and steady income. Most of the states or territories are paying at least the base amount of dues, and we anticipate that to continue this year. We're seeing sustained support from our corporate sponsors, of which there are many. And we are also seeing small gains in some new revenue streams, including royalties from publications that are put out, which continue to kind of solidify and strengthen our financial position. So things look good for the coming year. And now I'll turn it over to the Development Committee.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm Lizette Pelletier, and on behalf of my co-chair, Karen Gray, I'd just like to say that the Development Committee was especially pleased with the 2021 annual appeal drive, and we want to thank our generous personal donors who are both active and retired state archivists and some state archive staff. Our next appeal will be in May, and if you haven't contributed in the past, we hope that you will consider making a contribution when you receive your appeal letter. Dues notifications have been sent out for this year. Please return your form as soon as possible, even if there are no changes from last year. Barbara and Ann are in the process of contacting current corporate sponsors about renewing their support for 2022. We have commitments from 4 of our current sponsors so far. That includes Ancestry, Family Search, Apex, Axiom, and the Northeast Document Conservation Center, or NEDCC. In the past couple of years, we've had some of our sponsorships lapse, but we are hoping to re-engage them again this year. And we're also looking for new sponsors. So if you think any of the vendors that you work with might be a potential sponsor, please contact one of the members of the committee, and we will make contact with them. The silent auction will be returning in person at the meeting with BPE this September in Nashville. So we'll be looking for donations for items for the auction. So start thinking about any interesting items that you might have that you would be willing to donate for that. The committee has been looking at exploring or cultivating relationships with some of the major foundations, and we are hoping to start talking to the Mellon Foundation and possibly others. And so that's basically what's going on. And so we look forward to serving you in the coming year. And I will pass that on to Kathy Popovich, I hope.
Yeah, you nailed it. Thanks, Lizette. So I'm going to be talking today about what we've been working on with the Education and Training Committee and what we have in store for you all this year. But first off is an overview of what we were able to do last year. We hosted a total of 26 webinars, and that number includes the great programming that the SERI committee put together. We saw over 1,000 attendees and over 1,200 on-demand access views. So typically each year we have a theme for our webinars, and last year we decided to do a flexible theme so that we could adapt to what the membership was interested in, and so that we had a little bit more flexibility in scheduling people. And this year, I think we've decided to do something a little bit similar. So next month on the 24th will be our joint CoSA NARA webinar, and the topic will be on conservation and preservation. In March, we've got an advocacy webinar in the works, and we'll have much more information and the schedule for those webinars up on the website soon. Our monthly webinars are typically on the fourth Thursday of every month. That kind of gets moved around the annual meeting, but be sure to have that fourth Thursday marked on your calendars. And if you missed any of the webinars from last year, or if you know that you won't be able to attend some of the webinars this year, they are all recorded and they're on the CoSA website and the CoSA YouTube page for you to peruse. Last year, we continued our Shop Talk webinars with our corporate sponsors. So these webinars give the larger sponsors an opportunity to showcase their work, to keep us informed about what they're doing, what they're working on. So these aren't designed as sales pitches. Again, they're really just meant to showcase what the sponsors are doing. And we're hoping to kind of partner the sponsor talks with some similar work that the states are doing. We were able to do that at least with one of the shop talks this past year. So we really would encourage you to attend these webinars and help us support our sponsors and show our appreciation for their sponsorship. Last year, we also introduced a series of on-demand pre-recorded interviews that we call the In Conversation With, discussing a number of different topics, including diversity and inclusion, managing during the pandemic, the future of archives and archival education. So just a lot of really good thought-provoking content, and we plan on continuing those again this year. So again, those are all on the CoSA YouTube page. So if you haven't, I encourage you to check those out and share them with anyone you think would be interested. And if you have any ideas for potential subjects or potential interviewees for those In Conversation With, please reach out and let us know. Next slide. All right, next up is our communications. The newsletter, which hits your inbox monthly, called News Brief, is going strong with about 1,200 plus subscribers. If you're not on that mailing list, or if you know of anyone who might be interested on your staff or outside, let us know and we can get you signed up. We've got a good strong media presence. We're on Twitter and Facebook. So again, if you're not following, I encourage you to do so and share any announcements or stories from your archives with Barbara and Anne, and they'll make sure to get those shared and posted as well. The CoSA blog had a very fitting 21 blog posts last year, so we hope to continue putting those out this year, and please consider being a contributor so that we can get to 22 for this year. And that's all I have for you, so I will pass this on to Steve Murray.
Thank you, Kathy, and good to be with everyone today and to give you an update from the Advocacy Committee, which I co-chair with Jody Foley, one of the retired state archivists who so generously continues to give their time to our organization. The Advocacy Committee has responsibility for advancing CoSA's strategic aim of being a trusted and respected voice within the profession, but also to external stakeholders, funders, and others who have and interest in the work done by our membership and other archival organizations. We do that at several levels, notably related to federal advocacy. We routinely monitor federal budget activity with a focus on federal granting agencies, including the NEH, IMLS, and of course, and especially NARA and the NHPRC, the grant-making arm of NARA. We also occasionally choose, believing as a whole, I think, that we should speak earnestly and occasionally about important issues before the field and before government. And I encourage you, if you've not looked recently at some of our past advocacy alerts, they're all available on the CoSA website, especially one significant one that we released in November of 2020, which was a statement on cultural equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. Sometimes we do those statements in isolation, speaking only as CoSA, and other times we do that in conjunction with other organizations, and you'll hear more about those efforts from Sarah Kuntz in a moment. At the state and local levels, CoSA works really hard, and our staff has been spectacular at liaising with other state level or national organizations of state level officials who are stakeholders in the work of state archives. Those include organizations like the National Governors Association, the National Association of Secretaries of State, and the National Association of State Chief Information Officers, or NASCIO. And we have, over the years, had routine points of communication with them to see where we can be of assistance on particular issues like gubernatorial succession and transfer and awareness of proper records management procedures whenever constitutional offices turn over at the state level. NASCIO has been an important partner for us in thinking about technology and information management. So those are important relationships that we always seek to continue nourishing. The committee also has developed in the past, and will be continuing to do so, advocacy resources that are available on the CoSA website. One of those you may be familiar with that has served us well is the Importance of State Archives document that is due for a renewal. And we're going to talk more about this at the March advocacy webinar that Kathy mentioned. I would encourage you to join us at that webinar in March, and also to start thinking now about what recommendations you would have for updating the Importance of State Archives document so that we can be sure that it remains relevant and useful to our members when you are speaking to stakeholders in your respective states. Another example of advocacy and what I think are important and timely conversations taking place across the country right now was a step taken by CoSA in the past year to sign on as a champion for the Educating for American Democracy effort, or EAD for short. EAD is a national effort that came out of the education community. It was developed with a grant administered by the NEH with U.S. Department of Education dollars to create a new structure for well-conceived history and civics K-12 education at the state and local levels. And if you go to the educatingforamerican-democracy.org website on the champions page, you'll find CoSA listed there among a wide array of public history organizations, academic organizations, and others that are supporting that effort. And I've been in particular following the work of that effort. And if you're interested in learning more about that at some point, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. CoSA also works on collaborative advocacy in several ways. You're going to hear in a moment from Sarah about the Joint Working Group on Issues and Awareness, which is our most network through which we are most closely tied with other professional archival organizations. But we also speak and converse with other groups like the National Coalition of History, which is a national group with a full-time presence in Washington, D.C. That is comprised of several organizations in the academic history world, public history, archives, museums, and others that seek to create a direct presence on Capitol Hill on a range of issues And CoSA is a dues-paying member of that coalition and has an opportunity to express our concerns through the NCH channels. And finally, you probably know there are a variety of types of advocacy days and efforts that take place in Washington, D.C. annually. Barbara has been especially good at representing us through the National Humanities Alliance Advocacy Day. That's in collaboration with the state humanities councils and the National Endowment for the Humanities, and that provides a good opportunity for us to be present, to have a presence, and to be part of a chorus of voices speaking in favor of good, sound federal policy and funding related to history and the humanities generally. I will pass it over to Sarah for some more details on those collaborative efforts.
Thanks, Steve. So following up on CoSA's advocacy work, let me cover briefly what's going on with the Joint Working Group on Issues and Awareness. And as Steve said, this is one of our major collaborative efforts with other archival organizations. And just for a little background, the Joint Working Group is composed of members from CoSA, NAGARA, RAC, which is the Regional Archival Associations Consortium, and then SAA sends members from two major committees, the COP, which is Committee on Public Policy, and COPA, which is the Committee on Public Awareness. We're also joined by the executive directors of the associations. If they have one, RAC does not have an executive director, but SAA and CoSA's executive directors routinely join us. And then we did a few years ago set up some structure bylaws, sort of, so to speak, for the group, and we allowed for ex officio members up to 2 seats on the board if we feel like there's a voice that we want to make sure is being heard in the Joint Working Group. And for the last couple of years, one of the ex officio members has come from the American Library Association. That's been an excellent addition to our discussions because it's a good way for us to coordinate advocacy and other efforts with ALA as well and sort of expand our advocacy reach. As noted on the slide, for the first time since 2014, as we are no longer the chair of the Joint Working Group. So that's been interesting, and that's moved on to SAA, and it's been good to kind of get started with the idea that we'll pass off leadership of that group. So SAA is doing a great job leading us right now. And some of the things that we take up in our monthly meetings include activities similar to what Steve had outlined. We're sharing our advocacy agendas with each other. We are sharing our work with the National Coalition of History and the National Humanities Alliance. So just kind of keeping everyone informed, talking about any issues that might be on the horizon. As noted in the slide, we do try to create resources and joint statements when they're needed and warranted. Some previous joint statements have included topics like we did one on public email on private servers. That seems to be a problem for a lot of elected officials. They like to take their email home with them. So that was a strong statement that was issued from the Joint Working Group with all members signing on. Sometimes we raise issues that are coming from one of our respective groups, and we talk about the possibility of a joint statement. And sometimes we decide no, that to Steve's point, we feel like we want to speak when it's warranted and not just speak just to hear ourselves talk. So sometimes we decide that maybe an issue isn't worth a formal statement. One that is going to be on the horizon is the qualifications for the Archivist of the United States position. As you probably have heard, David Ferriero is going to retire this year. And as has been done with previous times when there's been a vacancy in that position, CoSA has taken the lead in creating a document that talks about things, behaviors, values, qualifications that we would like to see in the next Archivist of the United States. So the Advocacy Committee that Steve and Jody chair have just finished efforts for us to update that document now that it's going to be needed again, and it will go to the Joint Working Group and we will discuss it there. And probably what I anticipate will happen is what's happened in the past is that numerous groups will sign on to that as a joint statement. So watch for word on that when that comes out. We have done toolkits and things before around advocacy days. You may remember, some of you that have been around a while, the Archives on the Hill effort that took place in conjunction with a joint annual meeting in Washington, D.C., that joint meeting with SAA and NAGARA, where we did some advocacy on Capitol Hill in conjunction with our joint annual meeting. So when we need to, the joint working group is the place that develops webinars and toolkits and handouts and things like that for advocacy efforts. And then also for those larger advocacy efforts that we're involved in, like Humanities Day and things like that, we're certainly able to contribute information, statistics, things like that for the larger advocacy days like that we participate in. And then finally, our major project for this year is to continue the discussions that all of our members are interested in, which is finding some avenue for larger federal funding for archives. I think the best way to think about it is we're sort of interested in the LSTA program that comes out of IMLS for libraries, which is a block grant program, and it provides administrative support as well as grant money to pass out to other organizations in the state. So that's kind of the standard that we're thinking about. For those of you that have been around CoSA a while, you may remember the PAR efforts of several years ago, which that was a piece of legislation for preserving the American historical record, which got at that very type of program. So for lack of a better way to describe it, we're sort of dusting off a PAR-like effort and trying to think through what would that look like. So we're at this stage right now where the members of the working group have formed a smaller subset of us are looking at this. We're doing some exploration about federal agencies that might be good partners for this. Where does it make sense? Who are our possible collaborators on this? Libraries, museums come to mind in terms of advocacy for increased federal funding to preserve our cultural heritage writ large across the country. So that's kind of where we're at, and we're figuring out the structure. What would it look like if we created a new bill? So those are all things that we're exploring right now, and taking back to each of our respective associations to make sure that we're all working on this together and we're all on the same page in terms of these efforts. So that's going to be our big task for this year, is to start putting some structure to that idea. With that, I'm going to turn it over to nominating and Ken.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm Ken Williams. I'm the State Archivist of Utah, and it's my pleasure to serve on the nominating committee this year. And the nominating committee is responsible for selecting nominees for CoSA's board of directors. And we will be selecting nominees for 3 openings on the board when we begin our work in earnest in early February. The nominating committee will submit to the full membership of the council a slate of nominees for election to the board prior to the annual meeting. So we would like to ask everyone to please let us know if you are interested in serving on the board or also serving on any of the various committees that CoSA has. And we also want to express, and this comes from the board, our appreciation for those who serve on committees and who currently serve on the board. We couldn't do what we do and have the reach that we do without all of your help. So please let us know if you know of anyone who would like to serve. And that concludes my very short presentation. So I will turn the time over to Tom for the awards.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Ruller. I'm the State Archivist in New York. I'm going to talk a little bit about our awards program. CoSA supports awards with our partners, particularly Family Search and Ancestry, that do 2 different things. One, it recognizes leadership and excellence in the work that we do. And second, it supports the development of professionals so that they can someday assume stronger, more important leadership roles within their respective institutions. To that end, the awards that we offer, again, with the support of our partners, particularly Family Search, the Victoria Irons Walsh Leadership Award, which recognizes a leader in the state archives business and helps us support and recognize the excellence and strong commitment of an individual to help move the agenda and the case for state archives and government archives in general forward. The Victoria Irons Walsh, and for those of you who don't know, Vicki Walsh was the first executive director of the Council of State Archivists and has been an active supporter of archival and programs for decades. The Victoria Irons Walsh Emerging Leader Award, again, recognizes someone who is starting to show that they are a leader and will be a better leader in the future within the realm of government archives, particularly state government archives. The Advocacy for Archives Award does exactly what it says. It recognizes someone who has been a strong and consistent voice advocating for the archival enterprise. The Rising Stars Award supports an individual who may not be an emerging leader, but who is rising within our profession to help archives and government archives become better, and someone who needs to learn a little bit more and perhaps experience some things like project management or leadership or understanding something better so that they can be a better archivist, a better manager, a better leader. The CoSA NHPRC Schrab Award of Merit is awarded to a State Historical Records Advisory Board who has done exemplary work in helping to move forward the archival case within their state. And the CoSA Ancestry Leadership Award, again, recognizes someone in our profession who is a leader, who helps lead a significant and important activity within our profession to help all of us, all of these boats rise. There'll be a call for nominations for any of these leadership or rising stars or awards of merit in the next month. It's really a great opportunity for you to recognize someone that you work with, someone that you know, someone who has had an important impact on either your institution, your personal work, or the archives profession in general. So please seriously consider nominating someone for any one of these awards. It's an important aspect of the CoSA program and one that we're very proud of because of the things that it does, recognizes excellence and builds capacity for all of us. With that, I will turn the table over to Alejandra to report on SERI.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. I'm Alejandra Mutino. I'm the digital archivist at the Massachusetts State Archives and also a co-chair of the State Electronic Records Initiative, or SERI, along with Alan Ramsey. So I'll just try and keep this brief and give you an overview of what SERI has in store for 2022. And I'll start with some major grant initiatives that Jamie actually introduced earlier this presentation. So starting with BACR, which stands for Building Archival Capacity for Keeping Electronic Records. Just to recap, this is an IMLS National Leadership Grant Award that CoSA and SERI received, spanning 3 years of programming geared towards strengthening digital records preservation and accessibility capabilities within state and territorial archives. So there's 2 major points I'll mention for BACR for 2022. Firstly, hopefully most, if not all of you, have seen the call for participation for a cultural competency survey. So the survey results from that recent survey will be analyzed and released in a paper in February. And as part of that component of the grant, a series of workshops will then be convened to define CoSA community goals and objectives for cultural competency training. And this training will be done in partnership with Helen Wong-Smith, who's the archivist for university records at the University of Hawaii and is also the cultural competency consultant for the BACR grant. Secondly, the BACR project will deploy a new digital preservation capability maturity model, or DPC-MM self-assessment, to state and territorial archives. And this new self-assessment is actually going out next week. So look forward to that in your inboxes and through CoSA News. And some of you may remember that the last time the DPCMM survey went out was 2015. So this is actually an updated model and a new round that will contribute to existing data and will support longitudinal analysis. A lot of really great explainers on what the DPCMM is have just been released by the grant team through a series of blog posts, which you can find on the CoSA website, and also through a recent SERI webinar recording, which you can find on CoSA's YouTube channel. Moving on to another grant project that SERI is involved in. This is CoSA Prepare, or Preparing Archives for Records in Email. And this project was started at the very beginning of last year. So we're currently in the second year of the grant. And just as a reminder, this is funded through the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation and administered by the University of Illinois. So phase 2 of the grant started this month, and this phase covers tools and protocols testing of various open source email processing software. And that testing is going to be completed by a focus group of volunteers from state archives. More educational resource documents will be released throughout 2022. And one of them is actually currently being reviewed by one of the SERI subcommittees, and we'll learn about that in a minute when we go on to those updates. And then looking further ahead this year, the project will implement technical assistance and mentoring programs for state and territorial archives. And then I'll also just briefly mention that the State Electronic Records Initiative continues to release educational videos about various topics in digital preservation and digital processing. So you can check those out on CoSA's YouTube channel. And finally, planning is already underway for this year's Electronic Records Day. And we'll learn more about that again through the subcommittee check-ins. All right, so the first subcommittee I'll provide a quick update on is tools and resources. So this year, tools and resources will be doing a number of different things. They'll be providing support to the grant initiatives that I just mentioned. As an example, that subcommittee is currently reviewing an email preservation policy guidelines document, and that's expected to be released later next month. The subcommittee continues to maintain the CoSA Resource Center and facilitate improvements to that portal. Similarly, the subcommittee will be working this year to maintain a digital repository environment for CoSA's permanent digital records through a Preservica Starter Plus license. The subcommittee has a few other educational resource documents planned for 2022, such as an electronic records transfer workflow template that will build upon the work from last year's Move It project. And finally, the subcommittee plans to collaborate with the other State Electronic Records Initiative subcommittees to continue the educational video series, provide networking opportunities for archivists who code, and plan for Electronic Records Day. And the co-chairs of Tools and Resources are Suzanne Stasiulaitis and Joshua Hackle. Next up, we have Education and Programming. And this subcommittee is in the process of putting together the 2022 slate of SERI webinars. Some topics include documenting the pandemic through digital records. That one is scheduled for February. And selecting storage options, which is scheduled for March. And you can visit the CoSA website to learn more and to register for those programs. Education and Programming also plans to create some new CoSA communities forums, including a forum for email archiving and a forum for archivists who code. And if those topics interest you, we encourage you to keep checking the CoSA communities page and also CoSA's social media channels for announcements about when those groups will go live. The subcommittee also plans to encourage more participation from state and territorial archives to submit electronic records related proposals for upcoming conferences. And they plan to do this by highlighting calls for proposals when those come up through webinars and also through the CoSA listservs. And they also plan to connect individual CoSA members together who might want to develop session proposals. And finally, the subcommittee plans to work together with the rest of the SERI subcommittees supporting some of the activities I mentioned during the previous slide. The co-chairs are Bonnie Weddle and Catherine Behringer. And then last, but certainly not least, is Advocacy and Outreach. And this subcommittee has a bunch of things going on. They have a comprehensive social media campaign planned for 2022, which will include topical monthly tweets that coincide with events like holidays and annual archives initiatives, such as Records and Information Management Month, which happens to fall in April. And then as part of that, they're also planning quarterly themed tweets around different file formats. And the first quarter topic is PDFs. The other formats to look forward to include JPEGs, MP4s, and obsolete formats. The subcommittee is planning lots of collaborative work for 2022, including exploring partnerships with allied organizations like Nagara to work together on advocacy efforts, and will continue to collaborate with the other State Electronic Records Initiative subcommittees on the activities I've already mentioned. The subcommittee co-chairs are Christian Skipper and Patsy Mitchell. And speaking of Patsy, I believe I pass it over to you.
Thanks, Alejandra. Can someone advance my slide? Thank you. So I am one of two co-chairs for the CoSA BPE Conference happening in 2022 with the program committee. And I also serve on the local arrangements committee. We're still early in the planning, so we don't have a ton of details to share just yet, but I can tell you that it is taking place at the Tennessee State Library and Archives here in Nashville. We're planning on doing in person, fingers crossed. That's scheduled for September 26th through the 28th. That's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Our theme this year is community approaches to digital initiatives. And our program committee is a good mix of both CoSA and BPE people. We're working right now on the call for proposals, and we're hoping to send that out sometime in March. So keep an eye out for that. And if you have any questions, you can contact us at the email that's on that slide. You can also contact me directly, and I'll put my email in the chat. And you can follow us on Twitter or visit our website for any other updates. And with that, I will hand it back to Lisa.
Thank you, Patsy. And now we've covered an awful lot of topics. So does anyone have any questions for any of the presenters or about any of the topics? That was a lot of information in a really quick amount. Mary had a question about the DPCMM self-assessment, and so staff's going to look into that for her. But again, I can't stress enough on behalf of the staff how much we value the assistants and the volunteers, because the CoSA committee, the work that's done wouldn't happen without all of you. And if you know someone, or if you have someone on your staff you think, you know, I really would love them to get a little more involved, do reach out to us because we are always looking for more volunteers or people to participate. And one of the things that Kathy didn't mention in education was we have a bi-monthly opportunity for the CoSA staff to get together. It's called Chatting with CoSA. And right now it's the second Wednesday of each month. We may be looking to change that. We'll have to look at the calendar here. But we hope you would, when you see the notice about that, encourage your staff to be part of that. It's a great way for them to meet staff in other parts of the state and the other parts of the country. And, you know, we want to encourage everyone to be part of that. So are there any questions for any of our presenters? Okay, I don't see anything. All right, well then let's go on and share with you what's coming next. We have the monthly CoSA webinars that are coming up. We've got the February CoSA NARA, looking at preservation activities, and then the March is going to be the Advocacy Tune-Up. Go to our website under educational programmings, and you can find both the CoSA webinars and you can find the SERI webinars. Do sign up for them so that you don't miss these great opportunities. There are lots and lots of ways to contact us and stay in touch with CoSA. We hope you take advantage of whichever ones work best for you. Don't forget, we have a great resource center too if you're looking for information. So keep these in mind. Naturally, we could do none of this without all of our funders, and we appreciate all of their support. And then, of course, we appreciate your feedback. We don't have an evaluation for you this time, but we're working on some new questions. So watch for a new evaluation form. We hope that that will give us some information as we move forward that makes sense for everyone. And so with that, Eric, do you have any final comments you'd like to share with anyone? Or
So I would like to thank everybody who is involved with CoSA. There's, as I said in my comments, over 60 people from state archives, both staff and state archivists themselves, people who do a great deal of work on behalf of this organization. And none of this would be possible without all of that volunteer work. And it wouldn't be possible without all the hard work of the staff. So we're grateful for all that you do. If you're not involved with CoSA, I would urge you to get involved. Contact Ken if you would like to serve on the board. You know, contact members of these, the chairs of these committees if you would like to serve on committees. This organization doesn't function well unless it has the widest breadth of participation from the state and territorial archives. So we urge you to get involved. Lisa talked about the website. Please take a look at our updated strategic plan. It's on the website. And if you have any comments about it and you know, our vision for the organization, we would love any commentary that you could give us if you didn't have a chance to participate in the process. And then also the position and advertisement that I noted in regards to the replacement for Barbara Teague. That's also on the website. There's a PDF of that. Get in touch with Tom Roller. He'd be glad to talk to you about the position if you have any questions in that regard. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate everyone who joined us today, and we hope we'll see you again at our next CoSA webinar. So thank you all, and have a great day.